Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Also, a couple reminders before I get into my 5 things I think for you club members. For all the club members, I'm doing a Zoom for all you club members on Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So join me there. Look for the link on the page and go from there. And then if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on there, go from there, etc. For you gold members, I'll be doing a private Zoom on Thursday at 7:30 Eastern time. So both, so all and the gold members can go to the regular chat, but I'm going to get the questions from the regular club members. So again, appreciate you guys. And so tune in. We'll have some fun. Ask whatever questions you want and have some fun. All right. The other thing is on Tuesday, I'll be joined by Nick Wagner from ESPN, who covers the 49ers. I'm going to talk about the Deebo Samuel situation. Is he a possibility for Washington? Why not? What he might add, what he thinks of Deebo, where Deebo's at this point in his career, because the numbers have gone down. But where does Nick think he's at? And then also maybe get a little bit of insight into how they think, or how he thinks, just what he knows of Adam Peters and having been in San Francisco, what Peters might look to do this offseason, because there's going to be a lot of talk surrounding this franchise, as you know, as there already is, because they're going to be attached to some big names. Fair or not, right or wrong, that's just the way it is. So I wanted to get Nick's insight on that, but especially on Deebo Samuel. Is it a possibility? What would it take? What does Deebo have left? So that's Tuesday. And then later in the week, I'll have Logan Paulson on as we start getting ready for the NFL Combine, which starts next week. So not this coming week, but the week after. So anyways, a lot going on. So again, tune in for you club members. Join me on those chats. They're kind of fun. So anyway, let's get to my 5 things I think. And it does go back to one, I think you're starting to see the fruits of winning, which is national recognition. For years, I'd hear from some people, why doesn't this outlet, that outlet, ESPN, why don't they give us more love? Because you have to earn it. And this team has finally earned it. And you earn it by winning and by looking like you're a competent franchise that can not only win for a year, but then build on it. And that's where they're at right now. So enjoy this period, folks. But then, even for ESPN, we ran something earlier in the week or last week, just with a bunch of national writers or whatever, and just their predictions for 2025. And of course, we're doing this in February. Who the hell knows what's going to happen, because we don't know who's even going to be what the rosters look like. But it is an early look at where people think teams might be headed based on what they did this year and based on what their ability to improve for 2025. So shoot, we had a couple people, including Dan Graziano, who have the Commanders in the Super Bowl. Now they have them losing, but they have them in the Super Bowl. We have a number of people. There are 4 different people had Jaden Daniels as an MVP. That is, I don't think that's far-fetched, because if he gets better, then and they get better around him, why not? I mean, there were very few people who were more valuable to their team than Jaden Daniels was to Washington as a rookie. There's no doubt that he's going to be in line. He's going to have a lot of years where he's in this conversation for MVP. So he had 4, including Graziano. He really likes him. Mike Tannenbaum, former GM, has Jaden in that mix as well. Then you start to see, like, what are some of there's another one, breakout star for 2025. Now, you can already consider Jaden Daniels a star. Mike Tannenbaum has him as a breakout star because he said he's going to elevate to superstar status. So that's taking another jump, right? So, but this is where the Commanders are at now, right now. This is where your franchise is at right now. And then, of course, now you get to the other part of it, which is, hey, who's going to be attached? What big name is attached to these guys in the offseason? And I'll get to this in a minute. But right now, like Matt Bowen, former Redskins safety, former NFL player, said he had T. Higgins to Washington. Jordan Reed, my colleague we used to cover the Redskins, now national. He's had T. Higgins to DC. Seth Walder had DJ Reed to the Commanders. I don't know that I see either of those moves happening, but and I'll get to that in a minute. Then there was one person that had the Commanders taking a step back, and who knows, because the schedule is tougher, things are just tougher. You never know what happens. But even if this franchise takes one step back, I think they take two forward the following year because I like the way I've always liked their approach to the roster building. And if you have a good offseason this year, whatever happens this year, and you get another good offseason, I could see them taking a big jump in that year for sure if they ended up having it. And I don't even know what a step back is. Is that 10 wins? So anyways, but I do, and part of the reasoning on that is Jaden, he's already very good. How can he improve? Well, he can improve a lot. Like there's a lot that any young quarterback can do. Just because he was really good this year doesn't mean that he can't. Now, where the numbers go, I don't know, but as a quarterback, he absolutely can improve, whether it's a footwork and adding some different drops, whether it's, keeping plays alive more and looking downfield a little bit more on those plays where you're keeping them alive, et cetera. Because there are some big plays available that way. I just think the more you go through, the more you can cross off from your mental checklist before the ball is snapped, which he'll do, the better off you become as a quarterback. So there's a lot. So I don't, that he's going to still improve because there's a lot that he's going to work on. Listen, defensive coordinator is going to watch him. Well, guess who he's going to watch? All those defenses and those defensive coordinators. So while they're going to be learning him, he also is going to be learning them. It's not always a one-way street here as far as who's going to watch the film. Yeah, they're going to watch film on him, but he's going to watch it on them. They're going to watch it on the coordinators, Cliff Kingsbury. They're going to watch it on those other teams, and they're going to add to the pieces on offense. So there's a lot of ways that this team can continue to get better on offense. Shoot, they did what they did offensively without a consistent run game from the running backs and without a consistently strong number two receiver. Now this is what Dan Quinn said in the beginning of the year before training camp or in training camp. It's going to be by committee, and it was. So they didn't have that same number. There wasn't like Cincinnati with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. This was Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin and Olamide Zaccheaus, Terry McLaurin and De'Ami Brown. So it just kind of rotated, but they made it work. So if you add to that, and Zach Ertz, of course, was in there, but you add to that. So they did all this without a consistent number two receiver in terms of how the league would view them, without a consistent run game from the running backs, without an offensive line that by the end of the year was not run blocking very well. So they did all this and still had that. So there are multiple ways they can get better offensively, for sure. But number two, I think there is definitely work to be done. So whether or not they take a step back, again, I'm not going to sit there and, for 5-6 months, wonder about that. There will be a wonder about how they're improving it. Is it going to be enough? Were they better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is work to be done, and you know that. And this is a roster would skew a little bit on the older side, just because they brought in some of the veterans last year to help lay the foundation. My ESPN colleague Jeremy Fowler broke teams down into tiers, and he had teams that are still major contenders. Well, that's obviously Kansas City and Philadelphia. Teams that are on the cusp of a championship: Ravens, Bills, Lions. And those teams have had a couple years where they've been very good. The Lions with all the injuries. I know these guys went and beat them in Detroit, but because of all the injuries. But then again, you don't know what the impact of losing a couple coordinators will be. And, so it's hard to stay up there. And then where he had Washington is teams that are headed on the right track. And that's along with Denver, the Rams, the Chargers, Tampa, Seattle. So clearly Washington went further than all those teams. But they are headed on the right track. But they do have things that they have to fill before you can get to that level where you're on the cusp, major contender, right? And it could, who knows where it goes this offseason, but it's just the perception of these guys that nobody's viewing them as some I shouldn't say nobody, but that most people are not going to view them as some one-hit wonders. But you can look at them and say, yeah, they have Jaden Daniels, they have this, but you've got to get better here and here and here. Well, that's what the offseason's for. And so they can certainly accomplish. I don't know that you're ever going to fill all your holes in one offseason. I think that's very hard to do. But can you improve? The answer, of course, is yes. They have the draft picks. They have the cap room to at least make some good moves. Whether how splashy they are, I don't know. But they can make some good, strong signings with the cap space they have available, and they can get guys in the draft. So they absolutely can improve a decent amount this offseason for sure. And again, I would agree, definitely on the right track. Now, as Jeremy said in his thing, he said some people expect him to sign another receiver and then improve the offensive line. I definitely agree with the offensive line. I think with receiver, it's going to be interesting what they do because, this is an off-season debate that we're going to, until free agency, until T. Higgins signs somewhere, the Bengals do something with him. It's going to be a debate. Should they go spend that kind of money at receiver? And I think I can see this team. Listen, they did really well with what they had at receiver this year. I can see them trying to bolster that group, but I don't know that this is the move that they would make. I don't know that. That's not a report. That's just trying to get a sense of this, of what they might do. I definitely could see offensive line, certainly a lot of pieces on defense, because you've got to improve in those areas first and foremost. So anyway, that's why with the T. Higgins stuff, while it's would be really good for them to add for Jaden Daniels. Whether or not they would actually go do it, I don't know. But clearly, I mean, of course you get better if you add T. Higgins, but I don't know that they would do it. So, anyways, I think that leads number three. I think you have to be careful chasing names, and I've always said this. It's always about fit. One thing they did last year is they got guys who fit, and that was a big key for that. And part of the reason they had success with that is because they had a lot of guys who coached or worked with these players before they signed here. So they knew what they were getting and they knew the room, although it's funny because I talked to Gerald Tapp about this at one point early in the year. It's like, yeah, we know these guys, but you don't know how they're going to fit in the group. And the group fit very well. So, they really did well with identifying fit and the person or emphasizing fit with whomever they sign. So I would expect them to do that again for sure. But when I say the big names, because now we're going to get to that point where every big name that becomes available or might be available, and you'd be like, oh, they should go sign him. Well, you have to be careful a little bit here. Like Khalil Mack, for example, can he still play? Well, yes, of course he can still play, but he's also in his mid 30s. Um, He's also building a home in Beverly Hills. I think you need to know that because maybe he has this desire to stay on the West Coast and play with the Chargers still. Could he help here? Yeah, I think the hard part with getting guys who are at that stage of their career, while it worked last year with Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, if you're bringing those guys back, how many more 30 guys in your mid 30s do you really want to bring on? That's not the way I think you want to build your roster. Now, again, if you had a younger roster and he's a final piece, I think that's different, but you don't want to get older when you have some older guys already. Again, I think if Wagner plays this year, I think it would be here. I think if Zach Ertz plays this year, most likely it would be here. And both of them, those guys in the mid 30s, it worked out well for them last year. But I think you want to get some younger talent in here at some of these key spots. If the last piece you need is a guy who can come in and rush like Khalil Mack, that's great. I don't know that they're at that point, and I think if you can find some younger talent to go at some of those spots, I think that's the ideal way to go. Start building a core and a nucleus in those key spots. And it's funny because when you even look at Max, his pass rush win rate, he can still play, but he has I think it's like 5 of the last 6 years, he's had single digit sack totals. 2 years ago, he had 17. That's pretty damn good. Again, he can still play. When you look at like the pass rush win rate, for example, now how much emphasis you put on that, whatever. But his was at 13%. Chase Young was at 14.4%. Dante Fowler, I think, was at 19.6%. Myles Garrett is in the in the mid 20s, I believe. So, and that's another one that you look at, like if you're going to make a big splash, is that the guy that you would go do because he fills an area of need and he's an impact defensive player? The only question is that's what I'm going to talk to Nick about on Tuesday, or for Tuesday, is is Peters at the point where he feels he can mortgage some of that to go get one piece to put on that defense and go. Again, I've told you, like, even if it's 2 first-round picks, whatever the price is, and we don't really know the price yet, if there is even a price, because right now the Browns are not inclined to trade him. It's also mid-February. But if, let's say it's 2 first-round picks, again, you have to keep in mind it's the 29th pick this year, and chances are a low pick next year as well. Would you do that? And if you're going to make a splash, like here's a guy that he's about I think 4 years younger than Khalil Mack, but still in his prime and still producing still producing at a high level. So if you're going to do something, you want a guy who fits that kind of description, who can still come in and make an impact. But do you want to do that? And I think that's one thing they're going to have to look. Listen, they absolutely have to look into it. 1,000% have to look into Myles Garrett because he's a guy that if you can get him for the right price, for sure, he's a guy that can make a massive impact on your defense. The other guy that you're going to hear a little bit about, I mean, again, like this team is starting. You want to get younger talent here. What I like last year that they did, they went and got these older guys, not just because to help you win now, it's as much to set the foundation. Bobby Wagner did that, and he has a lot of value because he can still do that. Zach Ertz helped you do that. They both stayed healthy all year, which was extremely good for at those positions for guys in the mid 30s. Terry McLaurin pushing 30, Eckler pushing 30. So you have other guys that are starting to age. You want to start to get some younger guys. That's why I like what they did with, they did, the Frankie Louvu, Biotis, Dorrance Armstrong, guys like that who can help fit that core for the next few years. Get some guys in here that can help you win for next year, but the next couple years as well. Um, but again, we don't know what they're thinking just yet. And I don't know that we're ever going to fully know because one thing I'll say about Adam Peters, he is a guy that likes to keep things quiet and tight and quiet. So, there's going to be a lot of speculation about what they do, but I don't know how informed the speculation will always be. And I always tell you if it's what you're hearing versus what you think might happen. There's a difference. And the thinking part is more educated guessing more than it is just based on flat hearing it from people that you say, I feel comfortable saying this. So, and with, again, Peters is a guy that keeps it very, very close to the vest. So always remember that. And then like a guy like Ronnie Stanley, tackle for the Ravens, he'll be available too. This is where the name part comes in because at least, like I said, Khalil Mack can still play. Ronnie Stanley can play, but this is the first time he's been healthy in a while. He's a respected leader, just like Mac. So, but the last 5 years, he's missed 36 games. This was the first year he's healthy. So it's hard to invest a lot in that kind of a player. Now, maybe he's a guy you do on a 1 year deal because, again, he's 31. Um, if you're going to do that, but it kind of runs counter to what I just said. So you would ideally like to get somebody at that spot if you're going to go tackle. But if you're going to add to the offensive line, it'd be nice to get some younger guys on there to build a core for that front for not just next year, but for the next couple years. I don't think I'm not sure that the Ravens have the cap room to keep him. So I think they're probably comfortable probably if they don't have the cap room, then they'd have to be comfortable letting him walk. Will somebody overpay for him? I don't know. But again, he's a good player, but you have to be careful when you start to see these names. Do a little bit of research. Why are they available? That's the other thing you always have to keep in mind. Why is this guy available? And he's also for Stanley 24 penalties since 2020 2022. That leads the Ravens. So you just do the research when you hear these guys' names to see why, and always ask yourself, why are they available? Because really good offensive tackles don't typically become available unless you have an alternative on the roster, or maybe in the Ravens case, you don't have the cap room and just like you can't invest in somebody like that. And maybe Washington would be somewhere like that because it's hard to find good offensive tackles. Um, Again, I just run counter to what I said about Khalil Mack, but it's more about when you see the big names, it's got to be about fit and it's got to make sense. And then it depends on the investment, right? But I ideally you'd like to see this roster get a little bit younger, got more guys who are still in their prime, and have a little bit more history of durability for sure. So anyway, that leads into number four, and I think good offensive tackles are really hard to find. That's why they don't become available too often. That's why, you look at Stanley, you have to say why. And I think if you didn't hear my conversation with Jordan Reed the other day from ESPN, our draft analyst, go back and listen to it because he gave some really good insight on what you can expect from some of the tackle or the offensive linemen who might tempt Washington in this draft. Because as he talked about, there aren't a lot of high-end tackles in this draft. Now, with picking at 29, it's going to be hard. You wouldn't get one of the top guys for sure. But are some of those guys that are going to fall to you? Are they slam dunk tackles or are they tackle/guards? Kind of like Brandon Coleman. So I think that's why there's always a market for tackles on the open market, but you have to be smart in like what you're spending and what you're getting. You have guys like Cam Robinson. Well, I think it was kind of mixed reviews in Minnesota. and Alaric Jackson from the Rams, who also is free. And it's possible the Rams let him test the market. We don't know yet. I don't know that they're going to franchise tag him, but and he had a good year. But is he, what's the price tag there? So, but he's a guy that again, the Rams might let him test the market. So you always have to ask yourself why, but he can play. So there are some options, but I don't know if it's great options. But like I told you before, I think with Brandon Coleman, the beauty of him is he showed he can play left tackle. I think there could be a move. He could move to right tackle. He could move to guard and probably do maybe those would be better suited for him. But you went to the NFC Championship game with him as a tackle, and I think the key is you have to strengthen the line. So the point I would get to with the tackles is if it's better if you find maybe you can bolster your interior more with a signing or two, then do that, and then and go from there. But and then or find one of those guys in the draft who can do that and just start building a core along the front so you're not having to constantly change this group because it would be, we don't know when Sam Cosmi is going to return at this point. And they've made changes last year. You don't want to keep making multiple changes every year to that group. It'd be nice to get one group and just kind of build with that and at least have that group for a few years and just bolster the depth. But anyways, they're still kind of mixing, they're still kind of building that group out. That's why I say I think it'd be good to get a little bit more youth in there or guys in their mid-20s, to upper 20s still at or entering their prime. That's what you want to find those guys. Like that's how you build teams that win is getting guys in that range who can then help you for a few years while they're entering or in their prime. So that's the key there, folks. I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't know, but I think roster building is going to be an interesting thing to watch this offseason, how they approach it. And I do believe, like Adam Peters has been very clear about wanting to build through the draft and his fill needs through free agency. So I don't know that they're going to suddenly say like, oh my gosh, we're right there. Let's just go for broke. I think they'll be very smart about what they do. I don't know that they're just going to be conservative because you have an owner with his other teams who has shown that they're willing to go be aggressive with the Sixers, with the Devils. And I think you have a GM now with Adam Peters who has been with organizations that have been aggressive when they've needed to be, when they see the right fit. You saw it with Marshawn Lattimore. That was an aggressive move, and that's going to lead into number 5 in a minute. But I think you've seen that. So it's not like I don't think that they would be shy away from it just because they only want to build it this way. But I think you do have to keep some of that in mind, how they want to build it and why they want to build it that way. Because I think if you want to build long-term success, you've got to start building that core. And they did a really good job last year with the draft and with free agency that they brought some of those guys like on 1-year deals, but they signed enough to the multi-year deals. Plus, with the draft picks, you start to build your core, add to it this offseason with some more savvy, smart moves that they did last year. Again, it doesn't mean you don't go for some, I always want to make sure I clarify, you can sign big names, but it's got to be the right fit. You don't just chase the big name because it's a big name. It's got to be the right fit. It's got to make sense. And if it does, then then you have to put your trust in the people making the decisions. And I think this group has shown that they've started to earn that trust. Now, not every move has worked out so far. Like there's still questions about Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey. How are they going to develop in the future? There's questions about Marshawn Lattimore. That's going to lead to number 5. And I think so all the stuff I said about offensive tackles, that applies as well to corners. They're very hard to find. I don't know that you're going to find another starting corner for this group in free agency to the level that you maybe want or would expect, given maybe what some of the needs are or with some of the available space, whatever. And I say that like the Marshawn Lattimore trade was done because they knew what this free agent class was going to look like. Like they at the time of the trade, we talked about this, but they already know the guys are going to be free agents, and they went out and made this move designed to not just help them this year or try to help them this year, but also to help in the future because when they saw the free agent class, and I think that's why they made this move. So when you start to see guys like the DJ Reed, for example, when you see that, like they knew DJ Reed was going to be a free agent. They went out and traded for Marshawn Lattimore. And Lattimore fits the description of the kind of guy they want. The guy can play, when he's healthy, when he's right, play that press man, brings toughness, has good size, good length, etc. So I think Mikey Samerstill kind of runs a little bit counter to what Dan Quinn has often sought at corner, which is the bigger corners. They just happen to, what he has the elite level at is the competitiveness and the smarts, et cetera. So that puts him in a certain spot. But like DJ Reed, it's a smaller corner. Um, I think if they're going to go out and get a corner, to personally, I would prefer them to go. My opinion would be go get a guy who's got a little bit more size, and you can then, because you don't want to get smaller there. You don't want to overlook a good corner just because of size by any means. This is how they got Samerstill. They didn't overlook it. And I think you have to give them credit. There's a blueprint for whom they want it there, but they also want guys who have that mentality, right? But I do think like there are good corners in this draft who I think can fit that description, who have the size. And again, if you didn't listen to my Jordan Reed interview, go back and listen to that because we addressed it in there. There's a handful of guys in the draft that may fit that description. But again, keep in mind when you see moves in the offseason, they went out and traded for Lattimore for a reason because they felt like not just for this year, but for the next couple years. So rather than wait till free agency to try and maybe get a guy, they knew the class and they went out and made this move. So anyways, those are just some of the thoughts I have right now on mid-February. We got a long way to go, folks, but we do have the combine coming up in a little bit more than a week, and that'll start leading us into some draft talk, but also then free agency is just around the corner after that. So one of the things that happens when a team gets a championship game, the offseason feels a little bit shorter. The combine, the free agency, all this stuff creeps up a lot faster than I'm used to. So anyways, that's where I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about. We'll get into a lot of this stuff. Again, the Deebo Samuels talk tomorrow with Nick Wagner from ESPN out in San Francisco. Get Logan Paulson on this week. We're going to talk a lot about where he thinks the roster is at, some of the moves that maybe he would prefer them to or like to see them make, and then also some tales from the combine, just some things from over the years, or just maybe some fun stories about the combine from his days, et cetera. So anyways, folks, that's it from me. Appreciate you tuning in. Again, you club members on Wednesday, join me for that private Zoom, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Gold members on Thursday. Thanks, folks, and I'll talk to you next time.